of people want me dead. They call it justice. I'm the only one who knows the truth. All I have left is the wind by my side.
What is up, guys? Welcome back. It is time for a new Yasuo build. So this is a build that was made by the #1 Yasuo player in the world. He is currently 1k LP on the Korean server. So this build is more bruiser oriented, meaning that you're going to be a lot more tanky. So this is something that can be really good to use against especially bad lanes, you know, assassins and stuff, because it makes you super tanky. And you still get to have a lot of damage. But we will still be going for some damage heavy components early on, such as the Blade of the Ruined King, which I have been telling you guys to do for a long time now because it's just OP. I do that as well, or on Yone as well now. So that's the early game, you just poke with Q, especially in melee matchups. Remember, it is only the first target that is going to take the full damage from your Q. Any target beyond that will be receiving AoE damage, which is a bit less. But that also means that if you hit them with the AoE damaging part of the Q, it means that you will not be taking minion aggro. So that's a very good way of poking the opponent without you taking damage in return. Just staying back and poking as much as possible with the Q. We have lethal tempo in this build. You can also go for Conqueror if you want a bit better scaling. But you can see lethal tempo makes your early game super strong. I slightly miscalculated that he Q flashed, but it's okay. Because we are going to pick up the Yeager instead. And J4 getting that kill on the Lee Sin. I think he might have died to the rip-off from our Q, but we got the kills in the end, so that's what matters. So we just back off here, so that's a perfect first recall because it's going to allow us to get the Berserkers. We're just going to lower the cooldown on the Q, and it also has great synergy with the E dashing speed. So the start of the build is pretty similar to the normal Yasuo build. You get Berserkers, and then next item is going to be a seal. Because like early attack speed, and also crit is just huge on this champ. And after we have that, that's when we are going to build into the Blade of the Ruined King. Also the wind wall, do not waste it early on, because it has a pretty high cooldown. Pretty much a mini ultimate level of cooldown on that wind wall. So save it for something important, for example Viego's W or Lee Sin's Q. That's a pretty good kiting around, dodging his Q. That's why I really want to make sure that you're abusing the minions around you. So you can constantly dash around and make it really hard for the opponent to hit any type of skill shot. And that is basically also why lethal tempo is so strong in the early game. We will not have been able to do this with the Conqueror. But of course Conqueror scales a lot better in the late game, so honestly it is just a preference whether you want the early game power of the lethal tempo or you want the better scaling of the Conqueror. I like to recall, but honestly we just cancel right here so we can get some better components when you're going to reset. Also remember, something a lot of people don't know is that your E, like the EQ combo, can actually reset the cooldown of your Q. Not the full cooldown, but when your Q is about to come up, like when it has a little bit of cooldown left, if you go EQ to a target, it is going to refund the remaining duration. This is what allows you to pull off those more advanced mechanics on Yasuo. And we're going to pick up another easy kill. You can see how I'm being very patient with that Q tornado into mobile matchups because they will be trying to dodge it, right? So I just keep it. I keep it until they sliced away or use their mobility spells, and then I use it. That allowed me to get the knock up on the Lee Sin into a free ultimate, into a free kill. They got the seal, we also have the Berserkers, so that is the early game power we need, combined with the lethal tempo. Now we will start building towards the Blade of the Ruined King, which is one of the best one item power spikes in the entire game. Which is why I really like to build this on Yone almost every single game now. I've been telling you guys since the start, and now even the pro players are building it as well because they realized how OP it is. Or just snowballing completely out of control, that is basically what happens. Against the lethal tempo Yasuo that gets a couple kills in the early game, is that you just auto-attack people to death, and that's just how it goes. And just keep pushing it out. Remember, when you use when your Q is fully stacked, you can hide the animation with it, or off it with the wind wall. But I'm gonna explain why Trinity Force is actually a pretty solid item on Yasuo. It's actually pretty funny because like in the early seasons, close to when Yasuo was released, his main build was actually Blade of the Ruined King and Trinity Force. Back then Trinity Force used to give crit as well. And back then Yasuo was also not reliant on having crit because his ultimate did not need to crit for him to get that armor pen. They did change that later on though, so that's why right now you're building crit items to make sure that you're getting that armor pen. Once again you can see how I'm keeping that Q. I'm being really patient with it because I just know into mobile champions they will always have a way to get out, so just keep it until they use something and then I follow up with that Q tornado. It actually ended up hitting the Lee Sin, I just could not use the ult because we did not have vision. But just keep pushing it out, honestly. If you play in lower elos guys, like you will be able to snowball most of the time. You'll be able to pick up a lot of kills in the early game because people have not mastered how to play the champs yet, or even the laning phase. Just the main mistake people are making is that sometimes they tend to play too aggressive, which is fine, but if you're playing so aggressive, you have to be good at tracking the enemy jungler, and especially the enemy support. Because if you play something like a Yasuo or Yone, they will be trying to gank you a lot, because they really want to shut you down. So that's just something to keep in mind, is that you have to get some really good vision control and also being able to track the enemy jungler. Expect to get camp mid. As a level 6 Lee Sin going to roam around the map. I'm not gonna follow every single room. If I don't feel like it's worth it, I just push mid and try to go for the plates instead. That's also another mistake a lot of lower rank players make, is that they think they have to follow every single roam. You don't. Because if that roam the opponent is making is a 50-50, if they end up getting punished for that roam and you follow it, you waste the time and you are not able to punish them. But if you decided to stay mid instead, push out the wave, you're going to get gold and XP for that entire wave, while also maybe being able to get a tower plate. That's way more gold. And XP, right? So don't always just follow a roam. Only if you feel like it's going to be a good opportunity for you to make a counter roam. So I managed to get the entire tower here at 10 minutes in the game, so that's a pretty hard snowballing game. Which is fine, this does not happen all the time of course, but sometimes you will end up snowballing really hard and that's going to be fun for you. At this point, don't really need to waste the ultimate because we have so much damage, because we are so far ahead. So we can afford to be a little bit greedy with it. I'm still keeping that ultimate, as you can see. Even though I could have altered the switch right here, I went for the kill on the Viego instead because I knew that J4 had switch under control. And the Pantheon coming in to pick up that shutdown. It is what it is. So now for the new build. The first item, of course, the Blade of the Ruined King, finished up. One of the strongest 1-item power spikes you can ever get. It makes you incredibly strong in 1 vs 1s. As a split pusher, gives you a lot of sustain, lots of attack speed. And now we start building into the Triforce. So the first item here is going to be the Sheen. And the great synergy here is that your Q procs on hit and on attack. So that means that your Qs will proc that Sheen. So that's going to be a lot of burst damage with every single Q. Of course, Sheen does have a small cooldown, so maybe a few of your Qs will not proc it because it's on cooldown, but it's going to be a lot of extra burst damage. And then you also have that with your Blade of the Ruined King. So that's actually a lot of burst damage you get from each Q, as long as you make sure to proc the Sheen. We just AFK mid, honestly, just keep pushing it in, cause why not? That is basically the damage you're getting. He's 3 levels behind, of course, so he's pretty squishy, right? But you can still see that the damage is way better than if you had Shilbo. Like, it's way better because the Sheen. It's just what it does, that item. And then when you crit and get a Sheen proc, that's going to be even more insane. Just invading all the time here, trying to be as annoying as possible for the Viego, cause he cannot deal with that right now. We are way too fed. Actually, our entire team is way too fed. But the idea with this build is that it makes you tankier in the early game. The problem with Yasuo and Yone is that they have a lot of damage, right? They're basically melee AD carries. They have a lot of damage, but they're also very squishy. So if you get caught out by a point and click CC ability in the mid to late game, you just get instant one shot. Like, people will collapse and you just end up getting one shot because you're so squishy. With this build, you get stuff like the Trinity Force and also Randuin's Omen, which allows you to tank a lot more damage, so you can be a better team fighter for your team. At the same time, you also make it harder for people to chase you. Or like, not chase you, but to escape from you. Also chase you because that Randuin's Omen active is going to slow people, so you can, for example, ult somebody and then just proc that active and bam, they're gonna be slowed and also deal a lot less damage. You see what I did with the Viego right there is that at this point in the game, when you have enough attack speed, guys, before you ult somebody, always try to get an EQ combo off before using your ultimate, because that's going to give you a free stack of that Q. And also increase the DPS. So you or an ally knock somebody up, before you press that ultimate, use the EQ. To anything, it can be to a minion, because it is going to transfer that EQ combo to the target you're ulting, which is going to increase your DPS, and it is also going to give you a free stack of that Q. I know the description says that it's not possible or something, but it is. It works. It works, trust me. Every single high elo Yasuo player does this. So always make sure to do that. That's probably one of the most important things you can do. Another thing is that if you're not able to use the EQ combo off a knock up, don't use your ultimate immediately. Wait for the last possible millisecond before use that ultimate, so you maximize the time they are CC'd in the air. That is especially huge in team fights, in a late game team fight, because even a half second of extra CC matters a lot. Because it can mean the difference between you getting a kill or the opponent being able to flash away and surviving. That can turn the entire teamfight around. But those are small things you can do, but also really important things. I don't know why this guy is spamming his Mastery 5. But we'll take that ripoff. Of course, great synergy with the Yasuo. The Q also procs it as long as it's the main target that gets hit first with a Q. Otherwise, it is AoE damage for any target beyond that. As I said early on, that means that your Q deals less damage and also does not proc on hit. At full effectiveness spot, we'll just keep pushing it mid. The game is pretty much over, so just having a bit of fun here. Well, that sucks a bit that that Q missed right there, because he would have died to that burst damage with the Trinity Force. But it's like really fun to play with Trinity Force just because like you become so mobile, because you have so much attack speed and movement speed as well. Now you can just E to different targets at lightning speed. And it also makes you tankier, so you'll be able to tank a lot more damage while also having a ton of DPS with the Blade of the Ruined King, combined with the Sheen passive. The difference between this build and the standard crit build where you go shield bow into Infinity Edge is that this build makes you super strong in the early to mid game while also making you really tanky. While the crit build of course outscales damage wise, it's a lot better for damage wise in the later stages of the game. But it's a lot more squishy as well. This build allows you to teamfight a lot more effectively, meaning that you can potentially survive fights while also dishing out DPS. It does not matter if you have a lot of damage, if you just end up getting one shot anyways. So if you're playing against a team that has a lot of point and click and burst damage, then this build is something I can highly recommend that you try out. I am not the one who made this build, it is the rank 1 Yasuo, I think he's called ZZang or something. He's a Korean 1KLP Challenger Yasuo player and the best Yasuo player in the world. But it is fun to build, but technically he did not made it, he just made it popular again, popular. Because of course people are going to see what he's building and then they will try it out again. Because this is a build that was made, you know, close to when Yasuo was released, many years ago. Because it was his main core build back then, when he was not relying on crit items, even though Trinity Force had crit back then. But it's something I can recommend you guys trying out, also if you want to try something else, because like you always used to go shield bow into Infinity Edge and it can get boring sometimes just building the same thing over and over. That's why a new build can definitely be fun to use sometimes. There's a lot of DPS he's not able to match when we're this far ahead. So he is just going down and every single Q almost is going to proc that Sheen, so all of them at this point is going to hit like a nuke. Stealing that kill on the Gwen, picking up that kill on the Lee Sin, and the Viego as well, and that should be the game, so we can just walk up and end the game with our allies. But that was the new build, guys. I can recommend you guys trying out and let me know how it goes. Thanks for watching as usual, and see you all next time.